This video is not made for kids. It's designed to be suitable for all audiences, but quite frankly, the FTC scares me. So this video is an adult's perspective on Prodigy and a review from that perspective and for other adults and parents, but not necessarily parents. Hello and welcome back to another Prodigy review, where we're doing the intro after having watched the episode today. Don't worry about it. That's right though, all I want to say for the intro is we got some major Star Trek news on all of the shows. I won't bother to go through it all here. Prodigy got renewed for a second season. I think that's the only new news, but I'll copy my community post just in the description if you've missed the major Star Trek news, loads of release dates and stuff. But yeah, bam, let's just get into the episode, see how this works as an experiment. I thought that we were going to spend this entire episode talking about time travel mechanics. I have only one other thing to talk about, because for a good 80-90% of that episode, well, just about as much of my brain was dedicated to trying to figure out how the heck that worked. I think that we can award, with the big old Tom Paris thumbs up, the time travel episode that makes the least amount of sense in the entire canon. Quite an achievement, I might add. I'll say real quick, if you don't want to hear me go off about time travel mechanics, probably this bar is going to look like time travel mechanics, then like weird Rok-Tahk stuff. No, it'll say something else. But that's the bit that finally got my brain out of time travel mechanic mode. Wait, I've just realized, how was they didn't utilize I thought for sure the solution was going to be the chicken and the hen. You could somehow bring someone back through the loop. But that didn't end up being the solution. Right, so the situation, the combination of like the protostar explosion and the tachyons, the time travel particles, put the members of the crew, minus Janeway, we'll get to Janeway, basically time moved differently for each of them, right? Kind of like the original series episode, the name's on screen now, I can't remember it, where like there were the people who moved so fast they were like invisible and sounded like bugs. That's kind of what happened. Some thoughts there, like if they're the only ones moving at the slower, faster rate, would that cause problems like breathing, all the normal things, breathing, seeing, because I suppose the speed of light, would that be different? Relativity, this is the problem. This is why time mechanics are hard. But basically, like, is a sixth, a fifth of the whole ship kind of being affected? Maybe that works, but then is there like a sixth, the oxygen? Thinking about it, how was life support working for Rok-Tahk moving so slow? Because the other thing that's a big problem is the ship systems, right? These aren't 5 separate universes that have been made. There's not like 5 distinct ships. They're all running concurrently. It seems to be kind of Doctor Who logic, where being a second out of sync means that literally no one can interact with you, like, ever. Which I'll let that one slide. I think that, you know, the people moving super fast should see everyone not moving at all, and Rok-Tahk should see like blurs? Sorry, other way around. Rok-Tahk should see everyone standing still. Jink and Pog and the fast people should see blurs. But like, they're moving concurrently, just everyone is moving at separate rates, again like that original series episode. So how come, like, when we're with Jink and Pog at the beginning, we don't see the dilithium matrix? What's it called? Warp matrix? Whatever they call it. The big machine Dow built, right? And how come when Dow's building the machine, we don't see Rok-Tahk plugging in the thing? Or in fact, the robot plugging in the thing, then Rok-Tahk doing it. Because she had to build it separately? I guess she did it after the dolls was ejected. But you may say they all did that at slightly different times, except everyone's scene, with the exception of Murph, ended when the protostar exploded. So we have the fixed endpoint right there, where we know just about everyone was standing in the engine room at the time the protostar exploded. But we don't see them or their equipment. And when Gwen opens the engine port, like to get the robot out, how come Jink and Pog wasn't also sucked out into space? Blown out into space. The point is the concurrency doesn't work, but then there's also the ship. So is the ship, like, they're all trying to do different things to the ship's resources simultaneously, but at different rates. So is the ship slowing down to match their rates? I guess Rok-Tahk could have said, computer, play the holodeck at like 50 billion% speed. Editing Nathan here, and actually I realized to the computer, this is what Rok-Tahk would have said. Like, they didn't notice that? They couldn't communicate? In the TOS episode, that's what happened. Kirk, like, recorded a message, sat it in front of the nurse, and sure, it took, like, hours for Kirk, but then eventually she noticed and they could do intercommunication. And in fact, we see Gwen leave a message for Rok-Tahk, which, by the way, oh my god, did Rok-Tahk spend an egregiously large amount of time, like Peter Capaldi levels of time in that ship. Basically, the only answer to all that is because Janeway was time traveling. Because Janeway has to be time traveling, because she's experiencing these events concurrently, but going in between people's time zones. And so she's actually changing events so that then those things happen, and before we didn't see them. Like, Dahl's machine wasn't in the room with Jankum Pog because Janeway hadn't gone back in time to start Dahl on the process of building that machine, and etc., all the way back. So why can Janeway time travel? If that's your solution, I guess tachyons in real life, in real life theory, they're particles that travel faster than light. I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm pretty sure that means they would go back in time, but my counter to that is, when have Star Trek tachyons ever worked like actual tachyons or any subatomic particle? My favorite is, when the Enterprise D has to get a baryon sweep. It's the one Picard's got his saddle, Tuvok tries to take over the Enterprise D. It's that episode. Which might be a weird comment if you haven't seen it after watching Voyager. But anyway, a baryon is this. Basically, literally everything in the universe is baryons. I don't remember the exact definition, but it's basically like normal matter or something like that. You could look it up. But destroying all the baryons would destroy the Enterprise D and everything on it, except maybe some of the weird stuff. I don't know if it would destroy antimatter or whatever, but yeah, Star Trek particles, they are just weird. And so if Janeway's time traveling, like, because Janeway explained it, is that she could control like the speed her simulation ran at. Which again, if you can't see everyone else because of the Doctor Who rules, why can't you see Janeway, who's just adjusting the speed she runs at? But if she's just adjusting the speed she's running at, then she's not going back in time. Like, at the very beginning, when she left Jankum Pog, and then the next Janeway, who has the memories of being with Jankum Pog, so it's the same continuous Janeway. Oh, I've just realized another problem. So how come she... What was my original problem? God, so many problems. I don't remember what when I was going off. The tangent I realized is when the robot said computer delete Janeway before the ship exploded, how come it didn't delete every subsequent Janeway running at the same time? But did the computer have like 5 separate Janeway processes running? Like, it's a weird combination where she has to travel back in time, but she's also not. But how does the computer run that many Janeway programs independently? Because she's not remembering the stuff her future self is doing, but she remembers what her past stuff is doing. If you had like 5 independent Janeways, it would work. Just running at different speeds and not retaining memories, maybe being able to intercommunicate because they're the same program. Basically, all this gets fixed. There are the few little things that you can wave away with the Doctor Who rule of being a second out of sync means you're essentially untouchable. Not that that's ever made sense, even in Doctor Who, but I'll let you get away with it. I won't let you get away with everyone being able to interact with the computer, with the life support being able to keep up with everyone, particularly Rok-Tahk. Yeah, I kind of wish we had numbers if I wasn't so with how long Rok-Tahk was there. Peter Capaldi style. Right, I'll get to Rok-Tahks before I get into like the Rok-Tahkness, the time travel wise. So Gwen, immediately before the protostar explodes, saves the captain's log, right? In fact, I think the captain's log ends by the ship exploding. We hear that when the thing goes down, which doesn't make sense because that means the ship exploded from the bridge where Gwen was, and like other parts of the ship would be destroying in Rok-Tahk's time. But as I've said, this episode doesn't make sense. So let's just accept all that. That doesn't mean Rok-Tahk did everything she did for like the whole duration she was in her time zone. That means that everything that happened, all like hundreds of attempts to get Janeway back, learning quantum mechanics, a whole lot of math and engineering and all that, happened in like the fraction of a second between the detonation of the protostar engine and that detonation going anywhere. And if you do it that way, then yes, you have every 100 years a little bird comes and sharpens its beak on the Diamond Mountain. If you don't know what I'm referencing, it's the best episode of Doctor Who, which has got similar, a character is trapped in a different way for billions of years alone. And yeah, we can start talking about Rok-Tahk. So that was the bit when they cut back to Rok-Tahk the second time. I think she was surrounded by all the cups or something, like the mounds of meals she's eaten, which is already like a good month's worth of food. It's got to be. If I wasn't so busy, I'd actually go and try and track like how long the show thinks she was in there, ignoring all there's like 3 separate explanations for how you have to get the time travel to work, and they're all internally inconsistent and broken with each other and violate reality. As I said, congratulations on being the worst and most inconsistent timey-wimey episode of Star Trek. But then when they got to that, it was the bit where the part of my brain that for the past 20 minutes had been attempting to explain the time travel, which I should point out I don't think I've ever actually struggled with before in either Star Trek or Doctor Who. I'm the kind of person who will see the character explain the time travel mechanic, and then they'll be like, are you following? And I'll be like, yeah, that made perfectly sense. And then you have like Janeway was the worst at it, someone who's incredibly educated and actually has experience with this, going, no, that makes absolutely no sense. And I don't understand if I'm some sort of super genius, or like the writers just think people are way dumber than they think. I really want to know how like the average person deals with time travel logic. But anyway, that was where that just went away. And I was just kind of going, oh, the reality of the situation of like this 8-year-old girl. She was 8. She's now like 27 or something, like 4 billion and 27. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like, she just lived alone on the ship for months, judging by the food. It's like alone. She sent with like the only person she ever had contact with, Janeway, she sent away and then couldn't get back. Not just that, she said, computer, make Janeway go away. That program has been deleted. Like, she could probably well think that her command, her somewhat vague command, deleted Janeway. In fact, when she gave it, I went, wow, I hope that doesn't just, like, delete Janeway, I didn't think it would, but it's vague enough where, it could have. And what it really is it's the most, god dang it, the most Steven Universe this show has gotten. And I've said that before, where Prodigy set up so much of this trauma stuff, and they kind of hinted it or give the odd scene. And I really think my review of this episode would have been much different if they just committed. I think they need to commit. Granted, I get why you don't want to do it right away. I get why Steven Universe took 53 episodes before it committed to like the trauma stuff and brought that to the forelight, is because this is a kid's show made by Nickelodeon, and you gotta make the producers happy. Granted, Steven Universe has already happened, as well as plenty of other shows, and so I don't think you have to do 53 episodes anymore. It's the, like, paving the way versus the following in the footsteps sort of thing. But this would have been the perfect time to commit, because once you get Rok-Tahk seeing her friends for the first time in months at best, and in my head a substantially larger amount of time, her first words are something like, I don't know, it's almost a bit of a joke. I can't remember exactly what she says, and like she doesn't have the weight of an 8-year-old girl who's just spent months to years of her life completely alone, engrossed in study, attempting to save the ship that she was in no way qualified to do. I remember her first comment is, I think we need to talk about my title. And even with Janeway, like the first person she's talked with and seen in the same amount of time is like, it's not really much of anything. It's even an I wish I could hug you. I mean, you can, I'm pretty sure. We have solid holograms, but like, she probably should have tried or something. It just, the whole thing was kind of put off lightly and feel like we'd never go back to address it. And it really feels like the sort of thing, it's like, no, you needed to address that and have that be a part of this character now. They might, it just didn't feel like it, or it felt like it'd weirdly go away and then come back. People aren't going to like this comparison, but kind of like with Picard, he got assimilated by the Borg. He then kind of dealt with a lot of the trauma in Family? I think it's Family, the next episode. They end with like the implication he's doing therapy stuff with Troy, and then his trauma from the Borg like completely goes away, never to be seen again. He even pretends to be Locutus at one point with you, basically until First Contact, where it sort of comes up and he's randomly got like a trauma dream. Then like it kind of goes away again until Picard, where suddenly it's like affected his entire life since then, apparently. Like, it makes sense it would, but it's weird that you have that whole middle period where you don't, like, you see absolutely no sign of that. And so it feels like even if they do bring this back with Rok-Tahk, the fact that there'll be a little gap, even if it's just this episode where you didn't see that at all, would feel a bit strange. I want to provide a Steven Universe comparison, but I think that show is just way too well written and planned out for me to actually think of one. But no, the actual scenes where she's alone were done very well, brilliantly, got exactly the same reactions from me they should have. And I really did get the Heaven Sent vibes, that Doctor Who episode. And I think it's the only time I've gotten Heaven Sent vibes from anything other than Heaven Sent. But I just wish she had a little bit more weight in the ending, even if like when they're all talking about saying like little girl or whatever, whatever they were calling her at the end, if she was like, no, I'm 10 now, which is still young, a little girl, but like 9, 10, just age her up a year or two would have added so much to that scene. And that's how Prodigy's done its delivery of this stuff before. I mean, it's Rok-Tahk's line, which was still one of my other favorites, was like, it's the only thing I've ever eaten before, with the prison food, and like can deliver so much weight with just the one little thing that maybe on the surface isn't it's something that Nickelodeon wouldn't mind airing. It's just that, like, make her 9 or 10 now instead of 8 would be like, you'd get that weight. You'd get the feeling, which is one of the best feelings I think I've ever got. The best reactions I felt watching a show is the Heaven Sent, which, skip this if you're a Doctor Who fan and hasn't seen that, is they're doing the classic scene where he's trying to punch through the wall telling the story, and just slowly, every now and then it cuts to him on the top of the tower going like 1,000 years, 10,000 years, like 50,000 years, 100,000 years, 100 million years, 1 billion years, 2 billion years, and you're just watching him. Literally, it's the phrase I will coin. I don't know how many people understand it when I say it, but Peter Capaldi your way through it. It's a phrase I've used to mean that incredibly slow, laborious way, like to brute force your way through a problem. And that feeling of the first time you watch Heaven Sent with that, it's an episode, which I'll give a bit of context. It's just an amazing feeling of watching that scene. I've just spoiled you. I might fast forward or cut a lot of that because that was quite a long explanation. Basically, it's that sense of time and the gravity of what's happening, the loneliness, and the sheer determination as well. Rok-Tahk doesn't quite have that, where like she could just do something simple and let it go, but when you have to think about, even just a year or two spent in there, just having to learn all these skills, it's incredible. It would have been incredible if they just committed a little bit. 'Cause it's not like Steven Universe. It's not like she's dealing with the traumas of the war crimes of like our ancestors and the complexity of all that. Like, I won't get into Steven Universe now if you haven't seen it, but like, yeah, that show goes places that I know no kid show has probably gone before. But it's that light enough just to like start getting there and start easing the audience into where they could go. And when I said at the beginning, Prodigy had the potential to be a Steven Universe but Star Trek, and had the highest potential out of any of them, that's what they need to do to reach it. I mean, the only 2 perfect shows for me are Steven Universe and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And most incredible episodes or shows or something have this same element. But what do those 2 shows have in common? Well, fundamentally, they deal with very like gray, dark, traumatizing stuff, both war, weirdly enough. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be one of those great shows, you need to talk about something. You don't have to. I mean, you can be a good, enjoyable show just for the sake of it, but Heaven Sent, the finest episode of Doctor Who, is about grief. Deep Space Nine is about, well, look at the best episodes. Far Beyond the Stars is about racism. In The Pale Moonlight is when everything is on the line, how far is too far? And doing it in such a way where the answer is, we've crossed that line, but like you can't really tell as you're watching it at what point that line was crossed. And probably what's more worrying is once you realize it's been crossed, you turn around to figure out where, and you can't quite figure out where that line was. Even in a comedy, which, you know, would think would be all the fun and laugh. I mean, the best, biggest moments are, think Lower Decks, you know, it's the scene with Freeman getting arrested. It's the scene where Shax's season 1. It's the, is it spoilers if you're watching the Prodigy and not Lower Decks? But it's the bit where Rutherford loses his memory. I've decided I can spoil things in season 1. Like, it's those bits. And yeah, even comedy, the best comedy can be, is a method for distributing that stuff. Orville's an amazing example of doing the same stuff Star Trek does, but comedy. And it's amazing. And so yeah, I guess this is the review of Prodigy where we talk about all the shows except Prodigy. But yeah, I wish they'd just commit and go that little bit further. Few little things, I guess, before the scene by scene. The Protostar opening up engine port really bothered me at first, because I'm like, wait, is it like a, I don't know what you'd call it, like an ejection-based propulsion system where the Protostar is ejecting matter which propels it forward like a normal rocket? Because you can't go faster than light with that. That might have been their intent. You'd also have the problem of the Protostar slowly using mass, which we need to refill somewhere, and at the rate they'd have to eject mass, I do not think you have the energy to replicate it. But it actually made me feel better, because I'm like, well, no, it's probably just a power source, you know, it has to generate a subspace field. That's not the only way you can travel faster than light in Star Trek, but that's the only way, you know, you somehow need something that distorts space-time, and that's usually a subspace field. But I was like, you know, maybe that's just like, I don't know, heat or some sort of exhaust or whatever they just have to get rid of. And the easiest way is to push it out of the ship and exit the subspace bubble. And the Protostar actually leaves a trail when it warps, doesn't it? So yeah, that kind of did it for me. There was the bit, you know, probably one of the worst offenses in Starfleet security. So, you know it's proper Star Trek, where Janeway's like, you may not be Starfleet, but you're still my crew, and I'm programmed to help. And it's like, man, you've already had the Prometheus stolen by Romulans with only holograms on board. Could you imagine if that doctor was programmed to be like, well, they're my crew, guess I gotta help. I'm sure it's meant to be a bit deeper than that, you know, like Janeway kind of respects them, but she's also a computer program. And like, the doctor had a lot of free will, but he couldn't just like murder someone. You know, he had hard-coded medical values, ethical values. And even then, actual Janeway, like, would you tell me that actual Janeway would be like, yeah, I guess this is fine? Oh, this means like Janeway was kind of specifically programmed to help the crew of the Protostar, regardless of if they actually had the authority to be the crew of the Protostar and like even admit to stealing it. But I did find that funny, the way it was presented. Oh, and I quite like that beginning scene, like kind of the introduction. I don't know, I just found it funny seeing the Fox hen seed riddle. There we go. It's kind of weird as a team building exercise, because I feel like Zero just would have gotten there on their own. You know, you don't really need to work as a team. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen someone solve that riddle as a team. It's a fun, one of those riddles that like you hear so many times, I always forget it every time, and I can't never be bothered to solve it. It's also weird in the holodeck simulation, because, you know, these riddles are always, they're always dumb, right? There's always, if you were actually there, some simple solution. It's like, you've got 5 of these people, like, restrain the frogs, hold the hen, tie the seed shut, done. You can do it in one trip. That boat definitely could have held all 3. Yeah, I think I'll get into the scene by scene now. I think Prodigy's art style, at least for me, really works best when it's lit up. Like this time when they were on the desert planet, I think it works best in like just natural sunlighty stuff. I don't know why, but I just enjoy it like that. Prodigy has finally committed to, unfortunately, the small galaxy syndrome, as I like to call it. Aaron, further developments. I think I talked about that interview he did last time. If I didn't, I will still post it in the description. Bit spoilery, but it'll be there. Where on Twitter, I drew up a thing where someone questioned, like, why is there a Ferengi? And I had my own little theory. I went over it last video, I think. But, it's basically just they can go there. We're not deep into the Delta Quadrant. We're kind of skirting the Delta Beta Quadrant line, but it's just they can go there. And it's particularly weird for the Ferengi, who have to pass through Federation space to do it. So, like, they couldn't have left much before TNG. I'll give him credit that there are actually ways you can do it. He brought up wormholes, and he tried to defend Aaron that Voyager kind of gave the precedent for Alpha Beta Quadrant species way deeper in the Gamma Quadrant. Could not disagree more. There was the example of the sleeper ship. Which, why does Jenkapog need a sleeper ship if you can just go there now? But anyway, the Klingon sleeper ship in Voyager, around this area, actually, I think. The wormholes, no one could ever travel through. I'm not saying it can't happen, just it wouldn't really happen in enough that it'd be a big presence. The big one he brought up, though, that was interesting, was the Borg transwarp conduits. He said Picard showed that, like, they were kind of being used as more of a transporty thing to make the galaxy a lot smaller. Does kind of open the question of why isn't Discovery doing that? In fact, why the hell wouldn't Discovery do that post-burn? Is like a dilithium-free alternative to warp that doesn't even require an engine. Whoops, I think I've just solved Discovery's dilithium crisis. That's one I haven't seen before. I think Janeway blew it all up, which is a bit weird. I'm not sure why it's still around, but I missed that in Picard. I think he might be referring to when Soji takes the Lost Serena to her own planet through a corridor. But I'm pretty sure did she have to hack it or it was open? I can't quite remember. But if the Borg transwarp network is kind of opened up, that works for me. I'd just like to see it a bit more explicitly stated. But what brought all this up is that the diviner knew what a Ferengi was. Really, I think, though, the problem with small galaxy syndrome is I don't like how fast they got to the Delta Quadrant, especially considering it took Voyager like a few more years after Prodigy. I don't think they'd be home yet for like 5 more years before Janeway went back in time and didn't warn anyone about the supernova. But I think the problem with small galaxy syndrome is that it's more retroactive, and it now gives Discovery the responsibility to have to show people from all over the galaxy, which they've unfortunately haven't been doing, even though I think they should anyway, that late in the timeline. But now Picard's got to do it. It kind of works both ways, Prodigy's really far ahead in the timeline. It's just Picard and Discovery that are in front of it. But, you've kind of made the previous stuff a bit weird, and now you've had to set a precedent of you guys now have got to keep this up. Oh, I will say, as much as the actual technical stuff makes 0 sense whatsoever, they did it perfectly, because they did it just like any other adult Star Trek would do, is they're like, yeah, the kids are gonna get it. I would be amazed if they did, because it doesn't work. But, if it did work, they also gave that lower level non-technical explanation. You give the technobabble and then okay, but basically this is what's happening, to put it in real world terms, which was really good, helpful to understand. And the graphic they did was really nice. It's one where I can get meaning from it that they didn't explain, because I kind of know how stuff like that would work. I mean, it's not a real type of graph, but even if you just look at it, you can see a lot of time scales. You can make sense of it. And they even did it better, because as I was claiming before, if this was actual Janeway standing in front there, she would have gone, God, time travel, this makes literally no sense whatsoever. Not even like conceptually. Yeah, you can't get the most basics. This 8-year-old girl was like, yeah, all right. So respect to there. Just maybe write a better mechanical plot next time. Again here as well, where they actually talked about the dampened sine wave and put it, like before it was put on screen, I knew what they were talking about. I knew it was going to look like, because it's a real thing. And then kind of explaining the fast time, the slow time was really interesting. I liked how they did that. I don't really get why Janeway, probably should have understood it a lot better, but well, again, this is Janeway we're talking about, who doesn't understand anything because the audience has to be an idiot. So maybe tone down a little bit, not necessarily for kids, but for like the general audience and everything, compared to, you know, where this is Zero and Janeway, who should be experts in this situation. But yeah, it was really well done with the not talking down stuff, which again works really, really well. I've got a second poster up there as well, but shows that don't talk down to the audience tend to be very, very good. Steven Universe is a good show, go watch it. So clearly, either the scriptwriter or storyboard somewhere envisioned Dal to be playing Snake, and he's most certainly not. But you gotta love, you know, Mama Janeway just not understanding her kids with those video games, is like playing some Snake game. What is it for kids now? If you're like 8 or 10 watching this, what's the parent misunderstanding? Is it just like, is everything on the phone Candy Crush or something? You know, back in my day, it's like, why doesn't mom understand you can't pause online games or something? That probably would have been it. It's the equivalent of that. I don't know what the modern day is, because I'm old now. More poor Starfleet security with being able to upload this program. But, well, I guess they'd been on the ship before, hadn't they? With Chakotay. So, no, actually, that works out. Are they from the future? The robot and the diviner? Are there two robots and diviners in the galaxy right now? The ones that are... that... Editing Nathan here again, because can we just appreciate as I try and work through what I'm about to explain, as somebody who is incapable of forming images in their head, just watch what my eyes do for literally no reason. Wait. Oh god, more time travel. Okay. So, from the perspective of the protostar, Chakotay took it to the Delta Quadrant. It got boarded by at least the robot, maybe the diviner. It then went back in time to like the next generation time. So it existed, and then we know the diviner and the robot were hunting the protostar. And that's the protostar that they have now found. Yes, because it has the logs of the protostar being taken over. Because from the real world perspective, you had one protostar. They built the protostar. You had two protostars. Well, the one protostar sitting in a cave. Well, maybe some stuff before then, but sitting in a cave. Then eventually they built a protostar. There's now two in the universe. Chakotay takes the protostar to the Delta Quadrant. The protostar then goes back in time, but the one that's in the cave is still there, so there's only one protostar in the universe. Yes. See, time travel. It's simple when you think about it, but Janeway wouldn't understand. So the diviner is searching for the protostar. No, the diviner boards the protostar. Something goes wrong, it goes back in time. And then he starts searching for it as it has been in a cave for like 17... No, because he was searching for it 17 years ago. But that means there's two diviners. Because you'd have a diviner who finds the protostar that Chakotay takes to the Delta Quadrant. He goes back in time with them. And then you have the diviner who lived up to the point of finding the protostar. But now you have the diviner. It's basically a Nero situation. That's what it is. You have the diviner who's sitting on a planet trying to find the protostar. I think the real problem I'm having here is we don't know when the protostar went back in time. Did the protostar go back in time before, like, right now when Prodigy takes place, or has it yet to go back in time? See, this is what I mean. If this makes sense to you, please let me know. If this doesn't make sense to you, please let me know, because I want to know if I'm some sort of time travel genius, or if, like, screenwriters and people in movies are just way dumber than the average population. Because this makes sense to me. Basically, no, you either understand it, or I'm a time travel genius and you don't understand it. So we're going to leave it back and say, we need to know when the Prodigy went back in time, in, like, what year that happened. Not when it arrived back in time. That was around the Next Generation Season 3. But if it was the Bozeman, we need to know when the motion picture era was, not when it met the Enterprise D. That's how I describe it. Now I know what it feels like to be Hollow Janeway. 20 bowls in that shot. 20 salsa bowls. If Rok-Tahk eats 3 meals a day, which they might not actually, probably having been used to the meal of a child slave, then like a week and a half, roughly. I don't like math. But she's already super tired and stuff. So yeah, like, it's have to have been it, because now she's got to learn quantum mechanics, engineering, and a whole lot of math. Like, that's several months. And then I was going to say her foreboding intro to the finale, as it has to be. It's not the finale, is it? This is episode 8, and we're going to 10 before a break. So we got 2 more. Yep, 2 more Prodigy episodes. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 2-parter, especially with this. I really like the concept of sending the robot guy Doctor Style, is in Voyager Doctor, not Peter Capaldi, Doctor Style, in the body. I have a problem with it if he remembers the stuff that this robot's experienced. Because how would you transmit that back to the base ship? I guess maybe you could say there's a link, communications link, between the main robot and this guy, but I mean, raise the shields or something. Surely you could do something about that. I don't know. But yeah, all in all, I can't really say I enjoyed watching it because most of watching it was trying to get through the time travel. I definitely like the Rok-Tahk bits, which the ending could have been landed more. I wouldn't call it a bad episode. It's just like, it's one of those episodes where I can't really watch it to enjoy it or even not to enjoy it, because the premise is just so not working and the way it's explained, or even just trying to get through it myself, that just becomes the predominant thing. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Doctor Who, South Park, Steven Universe, The Orville, and Prodigy, and probably something else I've forgotten. Don't expect the reviews at this time again, but I got a bit lucky my roommate wasn't in, so I could record these at the time I used to. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. If this gets more views than Ferenga Gnarly, then I don't know what's happened.